Today is May 13th. We're at Auburn University. And Mr. Hughley, before we get started, just want to confirm that I have your permission to record this interview.
Yes.
Well, sir, thank you so much for joining us today. I guess I'd like to just get started with learning a little bit more about, who you are, where you come from, and some of your early years of growing up around here in Opelika.
Well, I was born and raised out in the country on a farm, and I went to Sanford Elementary School, Sanford High School for my early education. 8th grade, I went to J.W. Norton High School in Opelika, and from there, when I graduated high school, I immediately started to work at West Point Stevens, which is mill, because I wasn't able to go for higher education. So I started there, and I worked there until I was drafted. I was drafted in 1967. And I went to Fort Benning, did basic training there, left there, went to Fort McCullum for AIT, had 18 days travel time to Vietnam. And I went to Vietnam, and that's where the history of Vietnam was. I was in a infantry unit, and 3rd Brigade was the task force brigade, and I went through it and survived and came back home.
Mr. Payne, you took us fast to Vietnam. I'm appreciative of it. Before you went to Vietnam, you mentioned that you grew up here in Opelika on a farm.
Right.
Did your mom and dad? You grew up with both your mom and dad, and
Right,
any
right.
siblings?
I had 2 brothers and a sister on the farm with me, grew up with me. Unfortunately, all of them are deceased except me. I'm the oldest, and I'm the only one living. Mom and dad, sisters and brothers, all deceased.
Now, what did your mom and dad do for occupation?
My mom was what you say, a maid, and my dad uh, ran the farm. He did farming, and he worked at Opelika Foundry, and left there and went to West Point Pepper Mill, and he worked there until he was partially disabled and retired.
And what year were you born?
August 6, 1947.
And growing up in Opelika, during the 50s, growing up in a rural area on a farm, seeing both your parents working and your siblings, can you tell us about your early responsibilities? Did you work as a child?
As a child on the farm, yes, all of us had to work. Our father and mother instilled us in a work ethic, and we had to work. And by me being the oldest, I was the leader to my sisters and brothers. But we all took turns looking for each other.
What's some of those responsibilities?
Uh, had to make sure they got the right clothing, uh, make sure they had the adequate food, uh, and out in the country you had to be careful of wildlife, snakes, and all that. I had to make sure that, and whales, not to let them fall in well, and the farm animals, you had to protect them from them.
What kind of animals did you have?
We had 1 horse, and had cows, milk cows, and had 1 bull, and that was strictly for food. And we had a bunch of hogs. We had a hog pen that we raised for food, hogs.
Sounds like you were pretty busy early in your childhood.
Yeah, I was.
A lot of responsibilities.
I know in the morning before we're going to school, when I became of age, my dad learned me how to milk cows, and I had to go out there and milk the cows before I went to school. And it wasn't pretty. It was because the cow would lay down in the mud, and you had to wash them off to do it. And then before the school bus came, you had to wash yourself up to go to school. And it was it was hard, but it learned me the basic of life. Uh, when raised out in the country, when I went in the military, I had advantage on the other members because I was used to the woods. I was raised up in the woods. If you got hungry during the day and the food wasn't fixed, you go out and find wild apples, wild peaches, muscadine, plums, or anything to make a meal till you got to the thing. And I learned, being raised up there, I learned that I could tell the difference in trees, or you could tell if somebody had been through there recently, to walk, because the shrubbery was down or mashed down, and you could kind of tell whether it was a man or wild animal or what. And I learned how to look at the feces, what the animal left, to kind of tell what kind of animal it was, if it was a wild animal or something.
Doing all this stuff at your early age, and you mentioned that you went to Sanford and then to later to Darden High School. Is that correct?
J.W. Darden.
J.W. Darden High School. What year did you graduate high school?
1965.
And at that point in time, how was your high school experience there at Darden High School?
It was good. I enjoyed it. I was ridiculed, I guess you'd say, some when I first got there. You from the country, you don't know nothing. You can't keep up with us. But after I got there and got settled in with the class, they put me in the advanced class, and found out that some of the stuff we had at Sanford, we had already had. We was ahead of J.W. Darden, by it being a city school, and we kind of bonded in, and when we moved to downtown Opelika, in the neighborhood, the people kind of accepted us, and they accepted my mother because she was a mother to everybody, all the children. If you came to her house and you hadn't ate dinner or what, she fed us, she fed them, and that kind of made us bond into her.
What was your mother and father's names?
My mother was named Leo. Well, it was Leola, but we called her Leo for short. And my dad was named David, and they called him Doc for short.
And just jumping right back into your high school days, Sanford was a rural
school.
And then
it was a county school.
A county school. And then J.W. Darden was the Opelika City School. Were the schools still segregated at this point?
Yeah, they was segregated at that time. In fact, they didn't integrate till I think 70 or 71 when my sister graduated. They had a choice to go to Opelika High or stay at J.W. Darden. And I think in 1972 they closed J.W. Darden, but it went to Head Start. Head Start got it for $1, and they started the Head Start program.
While you were in high school, you graduated in 1965. Vietnam was going on, but did you know anything about it during this point in time in high school? Does Vietnam come around? Were you worried about being drafted?
No, not right off. we had a economic teacher, and we was sitting in class one day, and we was studying about the economic, and she made the statement, said, "You all look at that word there, Vietnam," and said the makeup of the country and what they are trying to do. Uh, some of you men sitting in here is going to fight. That's going to be the next conflict there. And so I wondered, how did she know that? And so I waited until after school, and I asked her. I said, "How do you know about Vietnam?" She said, "Well, from the look of the terrain, is North Vietnam is more hilly mountains, rock, and stuff. They don't farm much. South grows a lot of rice and stuff to feed the people. North is trying to take over South Vietnam in order to get the minerals and the fish and food down there." And she said that's where it's gonna be. And I guess her husband had been in the service, and he was a wounded veteran, and I guess she was following that to know what the next conflict was gonna be. So that prepared us that if you didn't go to college or you didn't have the means to evade the draft, that we were gonna end up in there. And when I got drafted, went to Vietnam, and came back, I went back to visit the school, and I told her, I said, "Miss Finley, you were dead on it. You knew we were going, and I survived." She said, "I was praying for y'all, but I want you to be prepared to go and come back." And that's how we knew about it. And some of the people, some of the students, they went to college. Some married and had children and got a deferment to get drafted. But I was one of the one that when they drafted me, I had no choice but to go and make the best of it.
Graduated high school 1965. What year were you drafted?
67.
What did you do in between those 2 years?
I worked at West Point Stephen Bleachery for those years, and I thought I had got away. They hadn't said anything, and I had bought a car, and I had kept it a while, and I went to pay on it one day, and the loan company said, "Hey, I got something you will like out there." Said, "Let me show it to you." I said, "I just got it in." Said, "Take it and keep it the weekend, and drive it to see how you like it. I'll let you have it. We'll take your other one as a trade in on it." So I left there that Friday, that Thursday, and he told me to drive it, and that Friday I kept it. I liked it. I went over there that Friday evening before he closed, and he said, "Excuse me," he said, "just keep it the weekend, and we'll talk about it Monday." That Saturday, that Friday when I got home, my mama gave me a letter, and she said, "That came for you. You got to go to the post office." I said, "Oh, that's some parts I ordered for one of my teachers." I said, I go up there tomorrow. I went to work, and I told my supervisor I had to go to the post office. He said, "Well, go ahead, hurry back, and pick it up." When I walked in the post office, I told the guy, I said, "I want to pick up these parts." And he kind of looked at me, looked at the card, and he said, "Okay, let me go back here and get them." And he was smiling. And he walked back, and about 4 or 5 guys came back with him, and they started singing, "Greetings, this is Uncle Sam. You have been drafted." And wow. So I got the card, and I went back to my job, and I told my supervisor, I said, "Man, I just got my draft notice up in the go." I said, "I won't be back Monday." And he said, "No." Said, "Don't do that." Say, "Come on back." And when the time for you to go, 2 weeks ahead of time, that'll give you time to spend time with your family. Uh, you let us know, and that way, when you get out of when you come out of service, you can get your job back. And so I did that, and the rest of it was history. I went on to Vietnam, but I didn't go back to there to work. I got a job at Uniroy, and
When those guys came back with that draft notice, you
uh,
said when the people came back with the draft notice, you said that they were singing and telling you welcome to the army. You got
right,
drafted by
right.
Uncle Sam. What were your feelings?
Well, uh, I didn't fault them, but I wasn't ready to go in the army. You know, at that age, uh, I was still enjoying. I was going with my girlfriend, and she had told me she was pregnant. And I, well, no, it was after I went into service. She told me she was pregnant, and she said we need to get married. And I had planned on doing it, but my uh, uncle told me, he talked to me. He said, "I hear you plan on getting married." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "She's pregnant." He said, "That's not the end of the world." He said, "Your mom and daddy, at that time, some people around Opelika had got killed in Vietnam. So your mom and daddy spent all that time and money on you to raise you. Say you marry a girl. Say I'm not talking about the girl, but you marry her and you go to Vietnam and get killed. She ain't gonna give your parents a penny, you know, and you might not even see the baby anymore. Say you tell her if she can wait on you to get back, then y'all will get married. If she don't, you ain't lost nothing." So I told her that it was a big blow up. You know, her people didn't want to hear that. You know, you done messed this girl up, and you going off, and you're not gonna marry her. What the church gonna say about it, and all that. So told him, I said, "That's my decision. I'm gonna do it." So me and her broke up then before I went to Vietnam, and I, accepted it. I was kind of heartbroken, but I told my mother that I was gonna make out allotment for the child, and I made it out to my mother, and I told her, I said, "When you need something, your hospital bill, Mama gonna have the money, and she gonna take care of it." And she's, "Well, okay, but I don't need you to do that." But I went ahead and did it anyway. And after I was over there a while, I didn't write or nothing. I just let it went. And so she started writing back, and she apologized. And we got together, and she said she was gonna wait on me. And my daughter was born during the test. That's when I got the letter saying she was born, and got some pictures of her. So that made me determined to come back home to see my daughter, number one, and then see my wife. And when I got back, we got married that October. And I raised my daughter. Unfortunately, I had PTSD, and I didn't know what it was. But me and my wife, after I think my daughter was about 12, 13, and we got a divorce. and but I raised 3 children by my wife. After she left, I raised 3 children by myself, and yeah, all three of them turned out good.
You're getting ready to go to Vietnam. You just found out that you and your girlfriend at the time are expecting a child,
Mm-hmm.
and your time's gonna have to come where you go to basic training
Yeah,
and ship
yeah.
out, if you will.
Uh-huh.
Talk to us about that experience. Where did you go to basic training? What was your job in the military?
Uh, when I went in, I went to Fort Benning. That's where I took basic training at. It was hard. We wasn't broke up then. She came to see me on the weekend and stuff, and we got along pretty good then. But uh, it kind of fell apart later on as I was getting ready to go to Vietnam, and that's when she she was listening at her aunt because her granddaddy raised her. Her granddaddy and grandmother raised her, and he was a minister, so it was kind of hard on her, you know. So, but I went to basic training at Fort Benning and took airborne infantry basic training, and uh, I made up my mind. I said, I'm drafted. I'm in the service. I'm gonna do everything in my part. All that's why I got the 450 club. I'm gonna do everything right and do what I'm told to do to survive, to be equipped to go to Vietnam. And in basic training, we had map reading and uh, different stuff that, and they kept us up all time of night going through the training. And it was a guy sitting up in the bleachers, and he went to sleep. And the drill sergeant, what was teaching the class, that was in AIT map reading. He had his steel pot laying there, and I was paying attention. The guy was sitting right behind that drill sergeant. Cause he had been to Vietnam, he took that steel pot and threw it up in there and hit that guy with it. And he said, "You gonna be the first one to get killed in Vietnam. You sitting up here asleep, and we trying to teach you something to uh, bring you back home." And that guy jumped up, like he was mad and stuff, and he told him to sit down. So I want everybody to look at you. You'll get yourself killed and get somebody else in your unit killed by you not paying attention. So that the bell went off in me that he's true. So I wouldn't go to sleep. Every little detail I pay attention to it. So that I think that was the point of survival for me.
You went to basic training, airborne infantry, Fort Benning, Georgia.
Uh,
You graduate basic training.
right.
Where do you go from there?
Fort McCullough, Alabama, in Anderson, Alabama. Didn't have no leave time. We came through Opelika, going up 431, going to Fort McCullough. And I saw my ex-wife. She was leaving her job, and we was on the bus, and it turned right where she was walking, coming from lunch. And the windows on the bus, you can't open her. I was trying to holler at her to let her know we were going through there. She couldn't hear me, and she kept on. And then when I got a chance to call her, I told her what time it was, and she said she was leaving lunch, going back, and stayed up there at Fort McCullough till we graduated from AIT. And that was airborne infantry. up there, and so at the time I had got a international driver license at Fort Benning. They gave me sent me over there, and I took the road test and for it. And when I got to Fort McCullough, I was the driver for the company, and I didn't have to go through a lot of stuff they did because I drove the truck, drove the Jeep for the sergeant of the guard. But I went through that, and I was disappointed. I was hoping I wouldn't have to go to Vietnam, but when I got the order, it said 18 days travel time, uh, going to Fort in Fort Lewis, Washington, going to Fort Lewis, Washington for Vietnam, and I looked at it and it said you have 18 days travel time from that day we graduated to Vietnam. And wow, I said this is it for the real. And I came home, and I enjoyed those 18-day travel time, but I was preparing to go, and I said goodbye to all the folks. Cause my mother was upset, that I had to go, and my dad understood because he was in World War II, and he went to the Philippines, and he understood. He just told me, said keep your head down and do what you told to do, and I did that. And when I left, my mother gave me a Bible with medal on the front and back of it. And she said, I want you to read this Bible and keep it in your shirt pocket. And I didn't know at the time she had heard that some people had got shot and the bullet hit that Bible, but it didn't go in their body on that Bible. So I carried that Bible the whole time. Not that I got a shot through it, but it was something to think about. And we had a guy in my platoon. He had a helmet and a steel pipe, and he got a bullet right through the steel pipe. But by the grace of God, it hit the helmet line and went round to come out the back. That was some things that happen to some people that you pay attention to.
You have 18 days of travel from Fort McClellan, Alabama, to Fort Lewis, Washington.
Fort Lewis, Washington.
And then Vietnam right after that. You came home for a little bit of time here to Opelika.
Yeah, I came home I had a 30-day leave, and I came home. I stayed 39 days. Well, there wasn't no problem with that. And I went back to Fort Benning for several months, and then that's when I got out.
Yeah. So as you're getting ready to go into Vietnam, 1967, you land in Vietnam. Where did you land at, and who were you assigned to there, and what were kind of those first impressions?
Well, my first impression, I was green, naive, on the way to Vietnam. The captain came over and said, if you look out to your left wing, so you'll see the fighter escort to escort us in the land. And we looked out and we could see the jets coming. My impression was we were going to be hitting bombs, mortar rounds and stuff when we hit the ground, and I asked a guy, he was going back for his second term over there. And I said, hey, man, they ain't gave us no rifle. What we going to fight with? They ain't gave us nothing to fight with, and we finna land. He said, man, don't worry about it. Say it'll probably be a month before you get to a unit, before you get to do any fight. He said, just take it easy. Everything gonna be all right. So we land the plane. The stewardess talked to us and told us thank for traveling with us. And they said the buses were gonna come up, but it kind of freaked me out when the buses pulled up. They had those crates over the window, those iron guards over the window. And I asked the guy, I said, what that for? He said, that'll keep the enemy from throwing a grenade in. And I said, well, I don't see nobody out there fighting or nothing. He said, man, you ain't got to worry about it. Say, you're going to go to a replacement center. It was during the monsoon season. It was raining, wet, and they got us off their buses and put us in a big old center out there, replacement center. And they told us what they expected to do. And expected us to do and told us when the meal would be served and stuff. And they said they will call your name out to let you know when you're going to be going or you had an appointment or something. So they put me in. Some of the guys that had to do KP, they put me on road guard at the gate for coming in. So they told me that I had 3 rounds of ammunition. What 3 rounds gonna do if the enemy is coming, you know? And they said, your job is gonna be to when the truck come in, you make sure ain't no enemy on the back of the truck, and they gonna be bringing the ladies and girls in to do the laundry for the whole compound, and said they are no threat to you. And so I was out there, you know, doing what I was supposed to do, and I was looking at, and so one of the captains, he came over, he said, you ain't got to worry about looking like you doing. You going too far, uh, checking everything. So I told him, and so after that, they we had to go through a little training and formality, and then they told us we were going to our unit. So after that, we we had to stay an extra day because the unit were getting rockets in the base camp. So when we did get to the base camp, we had to go through. It was a replacement center. A bunch of troops were there, and then they assigned us to our unit, and they told me when I was going to, where I was going to, and it was way down south. But when I got out there, it was tropical, like Florida or something. I said, man, this all right down here. I ain't got nothing to worry about. And they said, you just wait. And we stayed down there about 2 or 3 weeks, and we got ordered about being attached for a brigade. That's when we hit the stuff. And guy had told me, he said, you pick you somebody that look like they stable and not taking any chance, and you pattern yourself after him. And I picked a guy, and he said, I'm going to teach you everything I know till I get ready to go. And then you find somebody else, or you teach somebody, and that's how I survived.
What unit were you with?
I was in the, when I went out south, I was in the 25th Division. And then they changed colors with the 4th Division. So that's how I got in the 4th Division.
So initially starting out in the U.S. Army's 25th Infantry Division, and then they transferred over to the 4th Infantry Division.
What it was, they had a brigade of the 4th Division was in the Central Highland, and they had the brigade we was in July, and they said to keep from moving the whole brigade, they'll just change colors and change the name, and that's how we got in the 4th Division.
Now tell me what your job was there in Vietnam when you said you went south and then you got transferred over. What were you doing then? You were
Infantry, strictly infantry. I was a foot soldier in the jungle. That's what we were doing now. Although it wasn't in the jungle, we would go in the area where a lot of VC was. And then you have to go through there, search and destroy, or just go through and check the villages out. And you might get on a firefight, last 15 or 20 minutes, but you had to worry about a lot of booby trapped and sniper fire. And that's what I did basically going through that.
Do you remember your first time being shot at or
Yes, yes, I remember vividly. It it was scary because I had never, you know, experienced that at home. But when the first time being shot at, took cover, did like they said do, and you security on each side. Every other man turned the opposite way, and after it was over with, the platoon leader called for me. I had just got there, and he knew I hadn't been in a firefight or hadn't been shot at. And he called for me and told me to come up there, and I came up there, and it was North Vietnamese army guy was laying against a rock, and he had got hit right here, and the top of his skull was back. And he said, "I called you up here to show you this. I don't know if you ever seen a person killed, human being killed, but I want you to see it now, where you're not in a firefight, so you won't freeze up when that happened. You in an actual firefight." And I looked at him, and he said, "You okay?" Said, "Now you can throw up, or you can defecate, or whatever you gonna do it now. Don't wait till you get on the firefight." And I was all right with it. I survived it and went on about it.
and we talked a little bit before we came in about your Purple Hearts and Bronze Stars and some of the awards that you received during your time in Vietnam. So it sounds like you saw multiple firefights
Yes.
and you did multiple of these search and destroy missions.
Right.
And this was early on, I guess, when you got to Vietnam. It was in October of 1967. Is that correct?
Right.
Did the firefights come pretty early on in your deployments?
No, it was I would say about a month and a half before you actually got into the firefight. It was because we had a brigade commander, a colonel, that he was flying around, and we he would volunteers where we were needed for the hot stuff, and they go in, and he said, "I feel more confident my brigade going in." So we saw it later on. Saw a lot of stuff, and we get sometimes we got lucky. Uh, we was I remember we was going to going on a combat mission in a helicopter. It wasn't far, and we was flying up, and then all of a sudden the helicopter started going up, round and round, going up, and the whole bunch of them, it just went up there, and they just flew around up there. Now, what's going on? We looked out, and we could see artillery shell and airstrike going on down below. And I said, "What are they doing?" and one of the guys said they preparing the landing for us to go in. And I said, well, they should have did that long before. He said, we'll find out when we get in. When we landed, we recovered a company of weapons where the VC had overrun an armament company and took the weapons, and we didn't fire a shot at them. They were surprised when the airstrikes and the artillery came in on them, and they laid down and gave up. And we got all that weapon. It was in the Stars and Stripes that we recovered a company of our weapons from them, and they didn't even fire a shot at them.
Did they, after the mortar and the artillery started coming in, they laid down the weapons and
laid
fled?
down. And when we landed, they out there with their hands up, you know.
What were your actions then?
Huh?
What were your actions then?
We just got the weapons in, and they had a Chinook to come in, and we loaded them up all up on it, and they took some as prisoners of war and carried them in. Some were wounded from the artillery and stuff, and they carried them in, and we secured the area for a while, and then they helicoptered us back out. We went on to the next mission.
You told me when we were coming over to the podcast booth that you caught some of the Tet Offensive. You were there during the Tet Offensive.
Yeah, I was.
And one of your Purple Hearts came on 9 February 1968. Was that your first Purple Heart?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Do you remember the actions in the battle in which you received some of your Purple Hearts?
Yeah, one of them I knew. We were going through a village, and I told the platoon leader, I said, man, I said, we gonna hit the stuff. I said, you see that Como Y laying down in the village? And he said, man, that Como Y been here since 1954 when the French were here. I said, the French didn't leave no brand new Como Y. I said, this is something they just used in this village. And he said, well, we got to push on. Our sister unit is getting overrun. We got to push on over there. I said, be careful. We going to hit an ambush. He said, no, you don't know what you talking about. Come on, let's go. And we didn't go, I guess, 100 feet through that village. And that's when the ambush hit. And I got up there, and I saw how being raised on a farm, when you dig and you uncover earthworm, you know, and they were recent. So I said, we gonna hit the stuff because this is freshly dug here. They had trenches down through there. And so when we got up there and the ambush hit, we jumped in there in the ditch where they had dug, and we were down in there, and so they was up above us, and they started throwing Chicom grenade, that's a concussion grenade, in on us, and it was a guy, he was the RTO when he got there, and he panicked. He said, we gonna die, but they gonna kill us, we gonna kill us. No, he said, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. And I grabbed him and pulled him down. By that time, they threw a Chicom in front of him, and it ripped the laces out of his boots, and it broke his glasses and stuff. And he said, man, we going to die. I don't want to die. And I held him down. And by that time, they threw another Chicom grenade in. And when it landed, it didn't go off. And I saw where it came from. I reached and grabbed it and threw it back. And the grenades I had, I just remember the training, and the training that you cook a grenade off. And I started cooking grenade off, and I knew where they were. and I started cooking them off and throwing them back up. I threw all I had and got heels, and I threw them up there, and we was able to get out the trench. But I got hit in the chest and the leg from when it came around him. But I didn't know I was hit till after everything was over with. But that's where the training that we had come in that saved our life that day. And I think that was the first Purple Heart. And it just, it did me good to remember the stuff, the training we had. Because if it hadn't been for that, you just been out there uh, wandering around, you know.
Your second Purple Heart came pretty fast after
Yeah,
your first
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Was this the same type of
Yeah,
situation?
same type of situation.
Shrapnel wounds
Shrapnel wound,
from grenades or RPGs or
grenades, and the worst one, what I got. In fact, that was the last one. Uh, that was from a mortar round, and the way I got it, I had started carrying a grenade launcher, M79, and I had got pretty good with it. At first, I didn't want to take, but my platoon leader told me just try it. We got to have a grenade launcher with us, and I tried it, and he would let me practice with it, and I got pretty good with it. Well, we was ambushed. I told the platoon leader, he said, we're going to set up a blocking force for the enemy coming back between these two hills. I said, sir, you don't do that. You don't set up a blocking force here. I said, you put on the blocking force on both sides, both hills, and then you ambush them coming through. And now the colonel said, okay, you'll see. We set up, and we set on partial on the side of the hill, and they had a flamethrower. So when I heard it just woof, and I seen the flame come out, and I called on the radio. I said, we got a flamethrower out here? They said, no. I said, well, it was one down there, and I heard them beating on it, trying to get it to work. If they had got it to work again, we would have been crisp. And I said, he said, can you do anything with it? I said, yeah. So I lobbed 3 rounds down there. I didn't hear it no more. So the next thing, they tripped a trip flare, and I could see they had a mortar tube. I called back again. I said, they bring in the mortars out here? And they said, no, we don't have any mortars. I said, somebody got a mortar tube down there. And I said, they trying to get it to work. He said, take it out. I took it out, so I didn't hear it anymore. But in the meantime, they gave away my position because they knew where I was shooting at the M79, and they started shooting mortars over there, and it hit me in the right shoulder from behind, and that's where I got the last Purple Heart. That was the most serious wound I got, and I had to go to 71st evac, and then I left there and went to Cameron Bay. And ironic, I was supposed to went to Cameron Bay and went to Japan and came home. A guy mixed up the orders, sent a guy that wasn't hurt bad, sent him home and sent me back to my unit. And I had to go see the IG to get that straightened out. And he said, well, you don't have much time. Said, I'm going to send you back there, and they put you on light duty. So they told me for the rest of the time over there, I would be on, I had a profile. No running, no squatting, no stooping, no jumping or nothing. So my first sergeant asked me, said, can you eat? Said, You don't supposed to lift over 10 pounds. Said, we got to feed you. And he laughed it off. Where the other first sergeant was scared to go out to the forward fire base. So he come ask me, would I go out there? It had three first sergeants out there that was on the forward fire base. And I inquired about it, and they told me that they was out there to supply their company, and if I want to go out there, it'll be all right. And so they gave me the NCOIC of my company out there with those three first sergeants. When I got out there, they took care of me. I spent the rest of my time out there with them till time for me to deroll and come back home.
And your actual rank was
Sergeant.
a sergeant.
Sergeant
you were,
E5.
You were filling the billet, if you will, of a first sergeant, E8, as the NCOIC of that company. Just to swing back really quickly, you've mentioned in two of your stories, you've told the lieutenant about the commo wire, you told him about the ambush position. Can you talk to me about the relationship between the lieutenants and the platoon leaders and the NCOs within the company and within your platoon? Was there any animosity? Did everybody get along?
Well, mostly everybody got along because you had one job to try to stay safe and keep your men safe. We had one came in right before that ambush, the ambush that I told about the Como. Why? His brother had got killed in Vietnam. He volunteered to come to Vietnam to get revenge for his brother. He promised his dad, it was on his sick bed, that both of them, all of them had been officers in the army. And he promised his daddy that he was going to get revenge. He was going to kill some of them suckers for killing their brother. And we tried to talk to him and tell him, you don't do that. You don't. I didn't go to Vietnam to get revenge. I went because that was my duty to go. I went to do what the mission was required, and that was it. And he ended up getting killed himself, you know. So he was kind of an antagonist with the men because he was, let's go. We got to go out there and get them. We got to go out there and get them. And we tried to explain to him that you don't do that. You do what you were supposed to do. And we had a couple of them that come in, but eventually you could talk to them and explain that you is a unit. When they come to us and tell you, I need a squad to go out, you take your soft cap, put your helmet down, and go out on night patrol. I'm scared because I want a heap of people with me when you're going out at night and stuff. And the guy told me, he said, man, you're going to be all right. I said, come on, let's go. We got a soft cap. And he said, we going out, we were supposed to be a listening post, you know, for the enemy. They said a battalion of the enemy is coming this way. We're going to be a listening post for the unit, and we're going to let you know when they're coming. I said, how we supposed to get back? He said, we'll talk on the radio and tell them what position they in, and we'll get an airstrike and stuff on it. And we left out, and he went out to the bottom of the hill, and a little cold down there. He said, we going to sit up right here. I said, well, we supposed to be out there. He said, 6 of us men going to handle a battalion? So I called it in from out here, and we stayed down there that night. But the battalion enemy didn't come. But we was doing what we were told to do. We went out from the unit, and we were sitting down there and listening. So that's the kind of stuff. You didn't have no fight with it. Now I heard of where a platoon sergeant was gung ho like that, and they they had some shotguns for close combat, and he got killed, and they got shot in the back. That's my daughter.
Okay.
And but they put it down as killed in action. They then then but one somebody in there, and the enemy didn't have a shotgun, so they knew it was killed from
Fratricide.
in there inside. But they didn't do nothing to him. You know, it was kind of
That was the platoon sergeant that got killed
yeah, yeah.
by one of his men.
By enemy friendly fire.
Friendly fire.
Yeah. We got shot in the back, but they didn't do that. It wasn't in my unit, but they told us about it.
Did you ever have any instances of fratricide within your unit?
No,
Mr. Hughley, just to touch on one other point, during combat operations that you mentioned earlier, you mentioned that your company had to go out, and maybe it was your platoon, had to go out and connect with a platoon or a company, another unit that was isolated and maybe surrounded by enemy or heavily wounded. And your unit went to link up, and you guys suffered heavy casualties. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
well, what happened on that? We had ate lunch, that set up a lunch in a village, and we got through eating lunch, and they called the CO and told him that we were supposed to link up with D Company and go to help this unit out. And he told me, okay, so we just got finished lunch, and we ready to link up with you. And so he told him and said, give me your plot on your map. He gave him a plot on the map, and all of us were there looking at it. And so when they gave him the plot, it was right across the rice paddy over there in the tree line over there. And he said, I'm looking at the plot, and he said, according to this, you were right across the thing. So they said, okay. And he said, well, pop smoke and let us know where you are. And pop smoke. And the enemy was over there in the village. And they popped smoke. But he didn't clarify what color it was. That's what the mistake was. All he had to say, I see green smoke, blue smoke, or whatever. But he didn't clarify that. So he said, step out. Chinese stepped out and waved his hand with a army uniform on and waved his hand. And he said, well, I got you in sight. I'll see you. And said, we're going to push out. So one of my good friends in the platoon, he said, I'll take point. And he walked out in the riot paddy, and they shot him in the arm. So he was laying out there hollering, medic, medic. So the medic came up, and he said, I said, man, don't go out there. I said, they got something up because they hit him in the arm. And he was hollering for the medic. We had 3 medics to go out there try to get to him, and they shot them right in the forehead. And it was getting too bad. So I told the platoon leader, I said, hey, I said, don't let nobody else go out there. And so one guy came down there and said, can you tell where they coming from? And they said, yeah, it's in the tree over there. And he's the guy that had been there when I first got there. He said, well, man, I ain't going to let them guys lay out there hollering for medic. I'm going out there and get them. And they went out, they let him come out there, and they hit him in the side and just tore his whole side away from him. So he was hollering for a medic. And they said, well, we can't let anybody else go out there. We gonna call in the airstrike and get some artillery in over there on that area, and that's what they should have did to start with. And what they did when they came in and we got to that guy that had got hit in the side, and we got him on the medevac, and they got him out, and we went over there in that area. Wasn't a body over there, no blood or nothing. But we did find trace chain where they had him tied up in the tree, where they had got him down. That sniper got him down. They were gone. We checked the whole area. We couldn't find nothing. They probably went in those tunnels, and they got away. But it got a bunch of our medics killed. In fact, one guy, he just had went to R&R with his wife, and he was playing. He had ordered. He showed us the picture. He ordered a 69 deuce and a quarter, and he was gonna pick it up in Fort Lewis, Washington, and drive cross country with his wife, so he could show her that he got killed. And that was kind of hurting to us, the whole unit, because he was a country's objective, but he wouldn't carry a weapon. But he always made the statement, if I get it, it's going to be enough weapon around me that I can pick up a weapon. And that's the way he went out.
As your D-Row state's coming up in Vietnam, and you're getting ready to return home to Fort Lewis, Washington, are you excited?
Well, I was excited to be coming home, but you have comradeship with the guys there. You hate to leave them, because you done bonded with them, and all of them, they depend on you. You depend on them, and you hate to come home, but it's your time to come home. You want to come home.
Talk to me about coming home from Vietnam. You left Opelika, Alabama in 1967, and you graduated from a segregated high school in 65. You go to Vietnam, and it's a melting pot of people, and then you come back home in 1968 to Opelika, Alabama. Can you talk to me about your reception and your transition from Vietnam back to Opelika?
Well, we in Vietnam, it wasn't no race. It was everybody was one. White guy come up to you, and you were drinking out a cup or something, he'd come up, man, give me some of that, and drink out the cup with you. That's the way we had bonded together like that. His wife wrote a letter. He'll come over there and, man, you didn't get no mail from him. Read my letter, It was like that. Everybody was one, And we came back. It was about 4 or 5 guys of us were left that went over there at the same time. And we was all together, excited about coming home. When we got to the airport in Fort Lewis, Washington, all of us were there to seen some of the guys we hadn't seen the whole tour. And we called them, and so the waitress in the airport, uh, they called her over and said, "Hey, said, can we put these tables together?" And she said, "No, said, well, uh, we can't do that." Said they stopped her from moving the furniture around. Said, but I'll wait on you all together. So we were sitting there, and there were 4 or 5 white guys was sitting off over there. So one of the guys, so a white guy that had went through basic training, AIT, he said, "Hey, why y'all sitting over there? Come over here with us guys." They refused to come, and it made him red hot. He was from Atlanta, and he said, "This is a shame. Y'all get back here to the state, and then you change. You want to go back to the other way, and we done been together, been through hell, and back here." And he talked to me. He said, "That's all right. Uh, we understand now. You got back here, and you changed on it. But other than that, uh, we had a little when we got stateside unit. In fact, I run into it over there for a minute because some of the guys were black and had profile, and they wouldn't work. Some of the cadre or the unit was in. They hated that because they didn't have to get up and work. We had to be up at 5 o'clock in Georgia time. That's 4 o'clock Alabama time, and they wouldn't get up. They laying in the bed. So they did a lot of talk about that, and in fact, one sergeant that was with me, he was getting ready to go home, and they got him Article 15 because he wouldn't get up in the morning. He told me, "Well, I ain't got much time left. Y'all lifers," and it was one guy in there was a staff sergeant. He had been in the army 18 years, and he wasn't able to get no more rank. And it was just little instances like that, but it wasn't life changing. It was you accepted that and gone, and I got out and went ahead. Now, one thing that I went through that was when Lieutenant Calley was convicted. I was over there at Fort Benning, and I saw him, talked to him and stuff, and I asked him about that, and he said that they blowed it out. They used him as a scapegoat. He didn't do what they said he did, but they got to him in order to pull the military back together. They asked him to be the scapegoat, and he accepted that. And they were talking about the time he got. That man was riding around in a brand new red Corvette every day. He had to come on post, but he didn't have no guard on him or nothing. He went home to his wife every night. But it came out in the paper and on TV that he had time for that, for killing the babies and women in the village, and he said he didn't do that. So,
After you got home from Vietnam, you said you went to work in Uniroyal.
you're right.
And what did you do there?
What did I do?
Yes, sir.
I was in tire building. I built tires for a while, and then it was a union job, and I got a chance to bid, and I was serviceman for the tire builder, and I did that until I left.
How long did you work there for?
23 years.
23 years.
Uh,
And you came home and you said you got married after Vietnam
right.
and you had 2 more children.
2 more children.
And you said you struggled with PTSD after you came home.
I did.
Is
And alcohol.
Can you talk to me about that a little bit?
Well, it was something I didn't know what it was. I know it was a change, and me and my wife wasn't getting along. And I, some of the guys at Uniroy uh, recognized it. They told me it was PTSD that I was going through, and I was drinking. I guess I drank the alcohol to quell the PTSD because I didn't know what it was, and I finally got uh, when I left my job at Uniroy. I just because some of the people out there they didn't understand what PTSD was. If you would see something and get angry about it, they uh, there's no excuse for that. Even the supervisor would tell you that we're not gonna change for you. You got to change, and so I finally got with a nurse uh, down the VA, and she convinced me that I would come to class down there. And she told me she had been to Vietnam herself, and she got me in that class. I went to class for 2.5 years down there, and it helped me out a lot. And so I was able to get over the PTSD, and I quit drinking alcohol. Period. And quit smoking and everything. So everything kind of bonded into place.
Were you ever exposed to Agent Orange, anything of
Yes,
that nature?
I was. Didn't know what Agent Orange was early on. They had a B-52 strike, and they had Agent Orange out there, and it looked like it had rained, but the weather was dry. But it was kind of, I guess you said when you spray vegetation at home, to kill weeds or stuff. And we saw it out there, and we was on patrol to see what was the result of the B-52 airstrike, and we saw that stuff on there. We didn't pay no attention to it. We was all out there in it. It was getting on our skin. We didn't think about it. Didn't know what it was, and so we was definitely exposed to it. And I had prostate cancer, and they said that was linked to Agent Orange.
When did you when did you realize that you were exposed to Agent Orange, and when did the VA provide any assistance with that?
Uh, that was after I had got out. I guess I had been out uh, 10 years or more, and listening at other veterans and talking about it, and that's when I was going to the class. That's when we found out that we had been through it, and when I had worked at Uniroyal did 23 years, and I started to I filed for the VA for the Agent Orange, and they denied me at first, and then they finally accepted that, and I got treatment for it. But it was a long. That was 20 some years afterward that I didn't know that it came from the Agent Orange.
You worked for Uniroyal for 23 years. You retired from there?
No, I quit.
Quit from there.
Agent Orange was part of the Agent Orange, and alcohol was part of the reason I quit.
Yes, sir.
But I got another job, which was, to me, it was part of the Agent Orange, I didn't want to be inside a factory. Uh, when the sun was out pretty and stuff, I wanted to be out too. But you had so many days you could be off, and they were strict about that. So I just quit, and it was about 1 or 2 years before they offered the early out. They was offering you could be out, but I had already quit. But I got another job with the Lee County Board of Education, and I got a job at the bus shop, and that was a job that got me through a whole lot of the Agent Orange, everything, because with that job, you met somebody different every day. You would talk to somebody different, if whether it was students or teachers or instructors, and you talk to them, they greeted you, that your job is important, and we glad you're here and stuff. And so it worked out real fine with me, and I retired from them.
Congratulations on that. That's really well. As we start to conclude the interview, um, is there a message that you would like to give future generations who may view this interview? That can be for people going into the military or.
Well, in fact, I've tell the younger people that I come in contact with, I instill it in my children and stuff. Number one, stop the violence. You don't need to do that. Just because you get your hands on a weapon, those weapons they are using now was made for war. It's not to shoot a human being out here uh, with those high velocity weapons. And I tell them that uh, you have to respect other people's wishes like yours. If you can't talk to them and get them to agree on something, uh, you need to leave them alone. You can talk to them till you blue in the face. If they're not gonna listen, leave it alone. Go on, and hope that something you said make them understand what you are trying to get them to do.
And just, I guess my last question would be: is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to discuss, or anything you would like to leave us with?
Well, the one thing that greatly concerns me is our present situation with our present president. That the thing we sacrifice in life to get where we are, to get Social Security set up for, to get the VA help. They finally helped us for him to don't have any idea to just uh, destroy everything we helped for. And I just hate to see it happen. We've been a nation of helping everybody. And for him, not only him, the rest of the people that's around him to destroy that, our allies and stuff. Because we had allies that helped us in Vietnam, the Turkish people, the Korean people, they got some soldiers that were just as dedicated as we were, that helped us, and they came and got us out of a lot of stuff. So I would like to see that if we could, to try to humble ourselves and get back to where we used to be as a nation. Now that's what I would like to see.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Hughley. I
Okay.
appreciate
Okay.
um, your time here today, and I'm honored to be able to conduct this interview with you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. You're welcome. I
How did it feel like?
uh
Been okay?
yeah, yeah. I because we didn't get together uh the first time,
Yes, sir.
uh I feel like, I thought that I said that's useless, I'm not going.
Yeah.
But for some reason I talked to Wilbur Payne,
Yes.
and he told me, said, man, you need to go. Say,
Yes.
try to go on down there and get to that interview. So I'm glad I came. I'm glad I met you.
I'm really glad you came as
Okay.
well. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's really good. I was super excited when he said that you would come back, and sorry for the scheduling conflicts to begin with, but you have a really interesting story. I feel like we barely scratched the surface on some of it.
Yeah, that's true.
You mind if I look at these really quickly?
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So, Purple Heart here, Bronze Star Medal on 29 April. So, I was really interested. Your Bronze Star Medal correlates to the same day that you received the Purple Heart, and that was when you were throwing the grenades back.
Right.
So they awarded you a Bronze Star specifically for those actions there.
Right. They that I'm gonna be sure that.
Yeah, no, we're good. Yeah.
They the Bronze Star came about. We was pinned down, and the guys that was in my position, I had told them, I said, man, we gonna hold this no matter what. And they said, well, I'm with you. Anything you want us to do. So it was a black guy that had just came to the company.
Oh wow.
And he asked me, he said, what you want me to do? I said, we got to hold this position. When they finally convinced me, they saw that I was hit pretty bad. They had me to go up to the CP and the medic up there, and the medic told me, I asked, how bad is it? And he wouldn't say it. He said, you'll be all right. Said, you lost a lot of blood. And he said, what I want you to do, I'm going to dress the wound, and you stay up here with the CP. I said, no, my guys are down there. And if I go, I'm going to go with them. And he said, well, man, he said, I hate for you to do that. Said, because your arm is getting stiff now. And I said, well, I'm going back down there with them. So it was, you had in the unit RTO. That's
The radio operator.
well, he was the artillery.
Okay.
He was in with the artillery. You had to go through him to get artillery called in. So he came when I went back down there. He came down, and he said, "You all right?" I was. We had built some lean-to, and we was up under it, and we had put sandbags on the top of it. And he said, what you think?" I said, "They all around us. They coming." And they called out to our CO, said Captain Bruce Hughley. They knew his name. Said, tonight you die. And he said I'm talking about speaking plain English, the enemy. And he said, so brother, we no fight with you. We at the Blue Eye Devil. And I said, man, this is serious stuff here. So he said, what you want us to do? And I said, I want you to, this drawdown here, I want you to call in artillery and get them off us. I said, no, they gonna overrun us. They already showing what they plan to do. And he said, I've called for some artillery. I said, you call and tell them we need it now. We need some HE. That's high explosive. Now. And he said, they won't send me high explosive. They want me to get a smoke round. And where it come? I said, sir, if we get a little smoke round, that's giving away our position. We don't need a smoke round. We need HE. And he said, well, my hands are tied. I said, call them back and tell them we need it now. We finna get overrun. He called back, and the guy with the artillery, he said, I've told that lieutenant that I can't send HE. You got to have smoke round first. I said, man, we finna get over. I said, let me speak to your push. I said, go up, push. And he said, well, I'll let you talk to him. I told him, I gave my call sign. I said, look, we finna get overrun. I need HE now. And he said, well, you're down there. I said, I have to listen at you. He said, what you gonna do when I send the HE? I said, I'm gonna adjust it. And I wanted to, if necessary, come in on us. And he said, well, you down there. I have to go with what you. He said, I'm going to fire the first shot, and you tell me how to adjust it. And he told the artillery barrel, said, send him HE. And they started down the ravine coming up to her. And I said, drop 25. He walked it on up there to her. It was so loud, it sounded like a train engine coming when that artillery was coming in. And I dropped it. And then I don't know what hit that young guy, what I had sent down there to fight, but he got killed. And they dropped it in, and when I got closer we could stand it, I told him, okay, cease fire now. And by that time, I heard a thing come over the radio, and he said, that guy what called that artillery and said, this Puff the Magic Dragon, that's a gunship with many guns on it and grenade launchers on it. He said, I'm here to help y'all out. And so I said, okay, Puff. He said, I need you to pop smoke to let me know where you are, and then I'll take care. And I told him pop smoke. They pop smoke. He said, I got your position. He said, you can lay back and go to sleep now. So I'm going to take care of you. And so I said, okay. So he went on and flew. I didn't hear the plane anymore. I said, that rascal told us he was going to take care of us, and he gone. And after a while, I heard something. That joker went round and come back, and he was shooting. And it was hitting the trees just like rain. And he went all the way around us. And he said, that'll quieten him for a while. And he said, I just looked at my petrol, so I'm getting low in petrol, so I got to go back and refuel. Said, but you stay on my frequency. If you need me, Bird Dog gonna be, that's a little spotter plane. The bird dog gonna be here for the rest of the night. Said, you let him know you need me, and I'll come back. I said, okay. So that's what I got the Bronze Star for. Me calling artillery in on us. I didn't even know it. When I got back to the unit, they told me they put me in for a Bronze Star. So that's how I end up with the Bronze Star. But we thank God for Puff that night. Puff did his job.